So, we're doing another one of these. This time, instead of reviewing one of the most iconic shows within this genre, I'm gonna be looking at what is generally, it's a newer one, it's a lesser known one, but at least within the community of people I've interacted with online, it is a pretty talked about one. And that is Prehistoric Valley by Scrubwood Studios. And there's 3 seasons or series. I kind of flip between calling them both in the script. Doesn't really matter, honestly. And starting with the production quality. The production quality of the show, it evolved quickly. Like, the show's been around for less than a year. The first episode came out sometime last summer of 2024. And like, it improved at a faster rate than I think a lot of these shows did. But unfortunately, that means it did kind of start out rough. The production quality of the first season I consider to be kind of weak. It had some raw camera audio, all of the rows being made with Scrubwood's mouth, but as a plus side, it did have seemingly post-recorded or pre-recorded narration, and the camera work, though not amazing, was pretty good for a first season. For a first season of a show like this, usually these shows start off pretty bad, and if they have the luxury of continuing, they get better. But Prehistoric Valley started off pretty good from the get-go. So, there's that positive I can give it, I suppose. The story of this first season revolves around a Giganotosaurus inspired by Blue from Mesozoic Isle, who is named Gigabyte. He leaves his territory to join a sauropod hunt with Carcharodontosaurs throughout the valley, and his presence disturbs the ecosystem of the Forgotten Forest, which, by the way, is my favorite Prehistoric Valley location. Some of the PV locations do blend within my head a bit, but the Forgotten Forest I've always felt is kind of it's a more unique, more memorable one. This triggered an Acrocanthosaurus named Monochrome, who, for no reason in particular, just really liked this season, to try to take over the area while he constantly battles and beats a young Carcharodontosaurus named Serration. This is the main plot of the season, and while there are other subplots, such as an Allosaurus named Hatchet trying to survive in this more open region, and a Kronosaurus named Kai killing off various dinosaurs by a lake. And also Frost the Cryo, but he mostly just hung out and tried to survive post Monochrome's takeover. The story of the Forgotten Forest was quite connected, and I really liked that. Some of Kai's scenes worked because they had to do with the sauropod hunt that took place in the desert. I think the stuff with Hatchet the Allosaurus, and I think Scrubwood even admitted this himself, that entire plot did feel kind of disconnected from the rest of the season. It did feel kind of random, almost like filler, which this isn't even a long series, only 6 episodes long. The season ended with a 3-way battle between Monochrome, Serration, and Frost, in which Frost is basically just there for most of the battle, but he does have some contribution where he does bite Monochrome, and according to Scrubwood, that is kind of the final bite that does him in. Gigabyte comes back at the end of this fight and kills Monochrome quite easily. Apparently Monochrome couldn't fight away due to his leg injury, which I know I'm saying like supposedly and apparently, and it's making it sound like it's unbelievable, but I do feel in the episode it is conveyed pretty decently. I am mixed on this ending, though, compared to the other endings. On the one hand, it kind of anticlimactically ends the rivalry between Serration and Monochrome. Like, there wasn't really any payoff. Serration lost. She was able to hold her own long enough for Gigabyte to return and kill Monochrome, but just barely. Like, if it wasn't for Frost biting Monochrome and Gigabyte's perfect timing, Serration would be dead by this point, or at least heavily battered and injured. Alright, now on Series 2. Series 2 of all of the main series, I'm not reviewing the specials in this video, I'll do that some other time. But I feel like I connected more with some of the specials than the actual seasons, which is a shame. But I feel like that's just because I have issues with the endings to every season. Whereas with the specials, with a few slight exceptions, I like the endings. And I also believe Scribbwood did admit that he's not good at writing endings, which unfortunately I'm gonna have to agree with, but the last Triceratops, for example, had a really good ending, so just know that when I'm gonna absolutely trash, especially Series 3's ending I just didn't like outright, just know that it's coming from a point of constructive criticism. Okay, back to Series 2. I kinda went on an ending rant. I do have a script for this, but it is quite old, and it was made with some of the specials in mind, so this video is a lot more improvised than the DI one. Yeah. So yeah, production-wise, it's a good improvement. It has real sound effects, cuts down on raw camera audio, and has overall better shot compositions, except for the ending shot of the season where Scribbwood's shadow just completely blocks Serration, the culture. Series 2 delves deeper into what happens when a new species crosses into the rift, and that is, I think, probably the coolest premise for a season. It reminds me a lot of Mesozoic Isle, and it focuses on two halves of this issue, with the Triceratops hood and Rose, the Mapusaurus. Starting with Rose. She's a Mapusaurus portrayed by the Eofauna Giga, who pops up and has to struggle in this new unfamiliar world before meeting Atlas, a male who was in season 1, but he didn't do much, and I think he was mostly just set up for this plot line. There's also a subplot about Kai being beached and battling a Deinosuchus, but in the second half of the series we follow this Deinosuchus named Diane struggling to survive, which I feel like the story needed more development. The 6-episode format worked in the favor of the first series, but I do feel like trying to stick to an episode quota did somewhat restrict I think this series has the best plot, but I do think it would have been better if it was given maybe 8 episodes to breathe. I think 10 episodes would stretch it out a bit too long. Okay. But then we come to my favorite plot, which is the Triceratops plot. And it's a group of Trikes led by Terrans that completely take over the Forgotten Forest. Kind of unintentionally, but it's like they're invasive species. They're not trying to be invasive, but the simple way of life is throwing the ecosystem completely out of whack. But then we get to Fawn, another male Trike, who takes over the hood, kicking out Terrans, and he wounds Gigabyte, leading to his death, which at first I thought this was, like, Gigabyte's death scene was pretty brutal, all things considered. I liked it, but at first I felt like this was an unnecessary inclusion, like, oh, they're just killing Gigabyte because the big predator has to die at some point. But looking back on this scene, I do think, like, with the invasive species allegory in mind, I do think the death of Gigabyte, especially with his role in the first season as a figure of order and of sustainability, I do think that his death in the season has a lot more weight added onto it, especially by the fact it's Fawn that kills him. But then Serration comes back more than halfway through the season and kills Fawn after Fawn attacks Serration. Its finale is mixed for me, and it has the same issue as the season 1 finale. It ends Terrence's story off pretty well without having Terrence do really much of anything, but it also does give Fawn a self-inflicted demise, which has kind of the same problem as the series 1 ending, where Terrence, the character who had the biggest rivalry with Fawn, is kind of left without much of a payoff. But the other in this story not as significant up to this point character, Serration, gets a good payoff. And, like, I guess Serration was left without a payoff in the first season, so it's at least something here. But, yeah, I like this moment. It's just that Terrence didn't really get much to do. This is an issue that is kind of nullified for me slightly after the last Triceratops special that gave the character more to do, but at this point, that wasn't ever going to happen. And I know because I'm pretty sure that the entire special idea just came from me saying on a premiere, oh, it would be so cool if we got a Triceratops special. Like, I don't hate this ending. I do think it is the best series ending, by actually a pretty significant margin. But it just have some issues. And then Series 3. Keep in mind, this was written with Gigabyte in mind. It was supposed to be wedged in between these. So there are a few references to Gigabyte and a few things that kind of allude to my thoughts on Gigabyte. Even though I won't actually be showcasing its review here. Alright, then we have Season 3, which focuses on two fictional dinosaur species. With Spinosaurus torvus, which, by the way, is a cool name. They are portrayed by pre-2014 Spinosaurus figures, coming from a rift from the future, causing turmoil, killing several, including Seration's new son, Bruce. And Seration returns to take on the Torvus pair, killing the smaller one. Seration loses the fight, but is bailed out by a Tyranititan named Tango, who kills the larger Spinosaurus torvus. If any of you have been paying attention to kind of the issues I took with the last few Prehistoric Valley endings, then you can probably figure out where my issue with this ending lies. And that is that Seration lost the fight, and I'm okay with Seration losing the fight, but it still played off as a victory because Tango, a character who up until this point had little to do with this plot line, came into the scene and killed the Spinosaurus torvus, which, like, I don't know, and the season also seems to have a lot of plots that don't go anywhere. Like, Wade the Spinosaurus, who only exists to be killed, and I think it's a shame because Wade, going into this season, I thought was an interesting character. As far as I know, Wade does have some fans, but I just felt nothing for him. Hatchet returns in the season with his mate Machete, and this season did make me like Hatchet even more. And I think that some of the scenes, especially in earlier episodes, are really epic. But man, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this one, honestly. I like it, but it is my least favorite season. And the ending especially. I'm trying to be positive about this season. My favorite episode in the series comes from this season. I was hyped for it because around the time I started like following what Scrubwood Studios does was between Series 2 and Gigabyte. So this was like the first series I got to see the hype for. Like, I wanted to end this review on a positive note, I guess, but I can't deny that Series 3 is just my least favorite series. And I don't know. So, for now, I'm gonna give this a production quality score of 7, a story score of 5, and a characters score of 9. I do think that the characters are definitely the strongest aspect of PV. This gives it an overall score of 70, which I guess this is kind of a positive note because that puts Prehistoric Valley above Dinosaur Island, which got a score of 67 in the last review. Which, yes, Dinosaur Island is weighed down by its first couple of seasons, and also to an extent Season 4. But I do think that Prehistoric Valley, within less than a year, surpassing Dinosaur Island, even though it was way more ambitious to start with. I do think that this can be taken as a positive note. I'm going unscripted here. I forgot to mention my best episode. It's Magnitude, the premiere episode of Series 3. Unscripted segment. I do want to thank Scrubwood Studios for making this, because after kind of around the deprioritization, as it was said, of Dinosaur Island Season 5 and Mesozoic Island, any DI fan will have PTSD when they hear the word deprioritized. After that point, I was still looking at some things. I was still following Toady because I was pretty invested in the storyline, but overall I wasn't that involved with this community anymore, because it did feel like it was dying out. And I do feel like there were some things. I binged the first season of I Love the Mesozoic one time when I was extremely bored. That turned out to be one of the best decisions I've made in recent memory. But, no, I'm saving that for the IOTM review, which will probably be the next thing I do. Yeah. But, I felt like this community wasn't getting anything new. And this genre, especially, seemed dead. And I do think that there are not gonna be new DIs or new Mesozoic Isles, at least not for me. I don't think I'm ever gonna feel the same level of hype that I once did for these shows. But that is with two exceptions. I'll get to the other one in a future review, but Prehistoric Valley, though I have issues with it, and though it never quite reached that level of pure hype that DI Season 5 and Mesozoic Isle got me to, Prehistoric Valley was kind of what got me back into this community. And I do kind of have to thank Prehistoric Valley for this channel existing anyway. So, yeah. Thank you, Scrubwood Studios, for making this, I guess. The next review I'm gonna make on this channel will probably be an Isle of the Mesozoic review. To be honest, as much as Prehistoric Valley kind of means to this channel, and also to some extent means to me, I'm not even gonna I'll save it for that review. But I am excited to talk about IOTM.